The best ideas are free. Indeed, they are with the Ben Young from bwaggy.com, bwaggy.com, and he's joining us in the Ice House today, where he was last week as well. Good day, Ben.
Hey.
Joining us, of course, via Google Hangout, which is a great wee tool, an alternative to Skype, and seems to be working quite well for us, so I think we'll stick with that at the moment. Ben, today,
that's pretty good.
Today we are talking sort of technology type stuff. We're talking about podcasts, and I think most people will be familiar with the term podcast, won't they?
I'm still not sure. So basically, this came about from a quick conversation I was having this morning, and someone was asking me, Ben, what do you do to keep on top of fresh ideas and up to pace with everything that's happening? And the difficulty is, there is so much that goes on online, and there's so much that goes on in our relative industries that it is actually quite hard to keep on top of it. So one of the things that I do is I try and set aside some time in the weekend to listen to some podcasts. So a podcast is essentially an online radio show, but you can download that radio show and listen to it at any point in time.
So it's basically like time-shifted audio.
Yeah. Well, it's just like downloading a video, really. And in fact, a podcast can be audio and video. So, for example, we get together once a month and we do This Week in Digital Marketing.
Yeah.
So that's where Glenn and I and my business partner Duncan, we talk about some of the top marketing issues in terms of online are going on each and every month. And it's great for our customers and potential customers, and in fact just people all around the world who listen to it. And they get to get on top of stuff in terms of what's happening in the online marketing industry.
Yeah.
But there are tons of other examples. For example, my wife's going to Japan soon, so she's learning some Japanese via some podcasts. A good friend of mine loves trance music, so I think there's a podcast called Trance Around the World, and so they give you an hour and a half each week of trance music. There are tons of business ones. There are a whole lot of auto ones. There are even good comedy ones.
Yeah. In
terms of Ricky Gervais has done, it's reasonably famous, the Ricky Gervais podcast. I think he's had over 10 million downloads.
It's of course an area that was started off, I suppose, by early adopters and amateurs, but it's very quickly the podcast sort of market has been occupied by professionals, news organisations, broadcasters, as have seen the opportunity as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So something we haven't touched on is how to get them. So most people should be familiar with the iTunes store. So in the iTunes store, there's actually just a little tab there at the top which says podcasts. And if you click on that, you can get access to all the podcasts that are listed on the iTunes store. And I think virtually all podcasts are listed there. The iTunes store is kind of like YouTube is for video, but just for podcasts.
Yeah.
And they're all free to download there, and there are audio and video ones. So if you've got an Apple TV or a similar device, you can actually watch them on your TV.
Yeah.
So when I look at the user stats of one of our podcasts, there are people actually in the States downloading it and watching it on their TV.
Yeah. The more convenient it is, of course, the more likely you are to try it out, right?
Yeah. So that's the easy thing. If you just download it and then sync it with your smartphone or your iPod, you can then listen to it whilst you go for a walk, or whilst you drive to work, or just taking some time out on the weekend. Stephen Fry is a big advocate. I remember him saying a while back he used audiobooks and podcasts to help him get fit.
Yeah.
Because he could listen to stuff and occupy his mind whilst he went on longer walks.
Right. It's
just really, really good for finding out lots about some of your interests that maybe you don't have time to go along to a club, or it's not quite big enough here in New Zealand. There's tons. I listed a few that I watch and listen to, and so I've got things like founder stories from TechCrunch, which is people talking about how they started up their company. I've got the Ricky Gervais podcast. I've got Freakonomics Radio, which is where there's talk about interesting, economic behaviour.
Yeah.
I've also got WNYC's Radio Lab, which is really, really good, by the way. They just tackle lots of different topics and behaviours around the world and debug them from a scientific point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So they often get guest scientists on board to explain something away. What else have I got? It's a bit geeky. I've got TechCrunch Cribs. So that's where it's just like regular MTV Cribs, but they take you through, companies' offices. And it's just quite interesting because you hear about all these young, funky startups doing cool things.
Yeah.
And you do actually wonder, what is their work like?
Right.
And sometimes the perception can be built up. It's like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's not quite like that.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really cool. While we're talking about this, I'd like to share an app that I use to listen to podcasts, and it's on iPhone and Android and also BlackBerry and I think Windows devices as well. It's called Stitcher, and what do they say? They call it smart radio. Basically, it takes podcast feeds from all over the world, whether it be comedy, business and industry, news and politics, society and culture, education, entertainment, games and hobbies, right across the spectrum, and then puts them into channels. And essentially, you just start playing a channel, and then one podcast will seamlessly go on to the next, and it's curated. But you can also create your own channel and build up your own channel from your own sources. Or select from the sources inside the app. It's very, very cool. And what I do is I just maybe get home, plug it into the stereo with the RCA, and then I have my own little radio station going on. Yeah. It's very nice.
That's neat.
Yeah. So that's on Stitcher.
What's that again? Stitcher.
Stitcher, and you can check it out, Stitcher.com, or in the App Store as well. Yeah. While we're here, we may as well plug our own podcast. So what's your one this week in digital marketing?
Yeah, so if you're interested in online marketing or just anything marketing focused, really, just on the iTunes store, just type in "This Week in Digital Marketing," or if you just Google it, you'll find it. Or if you just search for Ben Young, I think it pops up too. We do it once a month. We do a audio version, a small video version, and a large video version. They're about 25 to 40 minutes long, depending on how juicy the topics are.
Yeah.
But it's really, really good in terms of keeping on top of everything that's happening and what are the most important issues.
Cool. And one that I do is called The Climate Show, which is a fortnightly dose of climate change news and issues and politics and solutions with my co-host Gareth Ronalden. Which is going really well, I hear. Yeah, it's the great thing about podcasts is that it's not linked to geographically to any sort of region. Basically, the world's your oyster if you want to go and produce a podcast on a particular topic. And we've got listeners in all corners of the world giving us feedback and also assisting as well and doing transcripts and that kind of stuff. So it's very, very cool, quite rewarding.
And we get the same.
Yeah,
we get feedback from all around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's real good.
All right. Well, find out more about all this stuff. You can continue the conversation on Twitter, twitter.com/Bwaggy, BWAGY, and also BWAGY.com. Ben Young, thanks very much.
Sweet. Cheers. Thanks.
17 minutes past 9 here on the Radio Wammo Breakfast.